Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It was a gloomy, rainy Monday, one of those days when every minute seemed endless. I was slouched in my cramped, dimly lit office, absent-mindedly playing solitaire on my laptop, losing game after game. Suddenly, the door creaked unexpectedly, and a woman entered. She appeared to be around 50, with obviously dyed dark hair. She stood about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed, I guessed, no more than 120 pounds. Too thin for my taste, but she carried herself with elegance. Her designer bag and sparkling diamond earrings clearly hinted at wealth. "Are you Detective Thomas Brown?" she asked, her voice clear and direct. "That's me. And who might you be?" I replied, leaning back in my chair, trying to appear relaxed. She approached my cluttered desk with polished grace and extended her hand. "My name is Abigail Miller." I stood up, shook her hand, and gestured to the chair opposite. "Please take a seat, Mrs. Miller." She sat down gracefully and immediately corrected me. "I'm Mrs., not Miss. I'm still married, for now at least. I think my husband is cheating on me and I need you to confirm it. You do that kind of work, right? Photos and all?" I sighed quietly. This was the part of the job I hated. After 15 years of dealing with real criminals, a bullet to the knee had ended my police career. Now, I was a private investigator, spending my days on stakeouts outside cheap motels, photographing unfaithful spouses. It wasn't the work I had dreamed of, but it paid the bills. "Yes, I do that kind of work," I replied evenly. "Tell me what you know." She hesitated for a moment before starting. "Oscar and I have been married for 27 years. He's a vice president at a large company. I think he's seeing one of his colleagues. I suspect they meet at one of the fancy hotels downtown, close to his office." I began jotting notes in my notepad. "What makes you think he's seeing someone? Do you have any evidence?" "Not exactly," she admitted, her voice softening. "It's more of a feeling. He's become distant, acting differently. We barely touch each other anymore, which is unusual for him." She paused, lowering her gaze to her hands, then continued. "A month ago, I found a receipt in his shirt pocket from a jewelry store for an expensive bracelet, but he never gave it to me. That's when I started checking his credit card statements. Over the last 3 weeks, I saw charges for hotel stays. He always comes home by evening, so why does he need a hotel room? His company covers client meetings, so it can't be work-related." "You think he's meeting someone in the middle of the day, on Wednesdays?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "And you want proof? Photos?" "Yes," she replied firmly. "We have a prenuptial agreement. If I can prove he's cheating, I'll destroy him. He won't get a cent." "Understood," I said, putting down my pen. "I'll follow him this Wednesday and find out what's going on. If he's with another woman, you'll have the proof." She smiled with satisfaction and stood up. I stood as well. The meeting was over. "I brought $2,000 in cash to start," she said, placing the money on my desk. "Is that enough?" "That'll do," I responded, watching her neatly arrange the bills. "I'll contact you on Thursday with a preliminary report," I added. With that, she turned and left the office, her hips swaying in a deliberately dramatic manner. As the door closed behind her, I suddenly caught myself wondering, did she notice the wedding ring on my finger? Or did she not care? Perhaps she was already envisioning her future, picturing a life after divorce. Who could have seen this coming? That Wednesday, I entered the most expensive hotel precisely at 12:30 p.m. It was the closest hotel to the office where her husband worked, and with the constant rain outside, proximity mattered. I discreetly handed a $100 bill to the receptionist and inquired about the room my brother, Oscar Miller, had booked. She gave me a long, suspicious look before glancing at the money. With a reluctant sigh, she reached for the notepad. After scribbling room 601, she tore off the page and silently handed it to me. I nodded in thanks and made my way to the free coffee station in the lobby. Glancing at the photograph Mrs. Miller had given me while sipping the barely warm coffee, I took up a position where I had a clear view of the elevators. At 1 p.m., Oscar Miller strode confidently into the lobby and headed toward the elevators. His movements suggested that his girlfriend had probably already received the room key and was waiting for him upstairs. I watched as the elevator doors closed behind him and checked the display to confirm he went to the 5th floor. After waiting 5 minutes, I gathered my belongings into a small duffel bag and took the elevator up to the 6th floor. From there, I quietly slipped into the stairwell and descended 1 floor. Carefully cracking open the door to the 5th floor, I scanned the hallway. It was empty. Perfect. I approached room 601. Pressing my ear to the door, I could hear muffled voices inside. I reached into my bag for the snake camera, but the gap under the door was too narrow. Cursing under my breath, I pulled out a crowbar and gently pried the door up. With the door slightly raised, I was able to slide the camera underneath. The screen flickered to life, and the autofocus began adjusting. After a few moments, the bed came into view. My eyes froze on Oscar Miller's face. As I recorded the scene, I shifted the camera slightly to capture the woman next to him. A wave of nausea hit me. I nearly dropped the equipment when I saw her, the unmistakable bird tattoo on her shoulder. My heart clenched. There was no mistake. How could she do this? For almost 25 years, my brother had loved this woman. Her betrayal struck me like a knife, driven deep into my gut. I felt the nausea rising again, but I forced myself to swallow it down, focusing on my breathing. She was nothing more than a lying traitor. I steeled myself, reminding myself I had a job to finish. Abigail Miller needed irrefutable evidence to annul the marriage contract, and I couldn't let my emotions get in the way. Clenching my teeth, I continued observing. The woman with long, dark hair moved in a way that left no doubt. Every look at her face confirmed the painful truth, tearing apart the last remnants of my resolve. Part of me wanted to burst in, shatter the illusion, and put an end to the agony tearing me apart inside, but instead I packed the camera away and slipped it back into my bag. Leaning against the stairwell door, I felt a wave of exhaustion, both physical and emotional, wash over me. The emotions, rage, sadness, disgust, were unbearable. Questions flooded my mind, questions without answers. Why did she do it? How long had it been going on? Shaking my head, I tried to push those thoughts away. I needed to stay professional and finish the job. Abigail Miller was counting on this evidence, and I couldn't fail her. 10 minutes later, Oscar Miller exited room 601 with a smug grin on his face. He adjusted his tie, glanced around, and headed for the elevator. Once he was gone, I hurried to the door. For a moment I considered knocking, but instead leaned against the wall across from the room. A few minutes later, the door opened, and there she was. As soon as she saw me, her eyes widened in shock, and she slammed the door shut. I knocked firmly but calmly, my voice commanding, "Patricia, open the damn door." After a brief moment of uncertainty, she cautiously turned the handle and opened the door. Her face was streaked with tears. "Thomas. Oh God, Thomas, why are you here?" "The real question is, why are you here?" My voice cut through the air, cold and merciless. "Thomas, it's not what you think. I can explain everything," she pleaded, her voice trembling and filled with desperation. "It was just enough," I interrupted sharply. "I'm tired of listening to your lying excuses, Patricia." Patricia's legs gave way, and she collapsed onto the floor. Her body shook with sobs as she hugged herself and rocked back and forth in despair. "Oh God, Thomas, does he know? Did he send you?" Her voice became a barely audible, panicked whisper. "No, no, oh God." Thomas stood over her, his expression hard, showing not a trace of sympathy. He had no pity left for her. He had seen the footage. No matter what she was about to say, the truth was clear. There was no coercion, no pressure. She had been more than willing. "Patricia," he said coldly, "David didn't send me. Oscar's wife hired me. She suspected something and came to me. I found the evidence. I didn't expect to find you involved in this." Patricia's sobs grew louder. "Oh God, what are you going to do? Please, Thomas, you can't tell David. It will destroy him. Please don't." Thomas's voice softened slightly, but his words remained firm. "Patricia, I care about you. You were like a sister to me. When you married my brother, I welcomed you into our family with open arms. You've been a part of our lives for nearly 25 years. You're the godmother of my children. How could you risk all of that for someone like Miller? Thomas, no, please. You don't have to tell him. I'm begging you. He shook his head. No, Patricia, I won't say anything. But you will. You'll tell David everything by the end of the weekend. If you don't, I'll show him the video myself. You have until Monday. Her eyes widened in horror. She gasped, her face pale. Please, Thomas, don't let him see it. I swear I'll tell him everything. Just don't let him see me with Miller. Thomas extended his hand to help her up and gently directed her toward her car. Go home, he said. End the day. Wait for David and tell him everything. Still trembling, she nodded and promised to confess to his brother. Thomas gave her his word in return. If she came clean, David would never see the video. Later, in his office, Thomas sat down to review the evidence he had collected for Abigail Miller, Oscar's wife. Using software he had bought, he blurred Patricia's face in the footage. Abigail only needed proof of her husband's infidelity to activate the prenuptial agreement. Knowing the identity of the mistress wasn't necessary. On Sunday evening, Thomas's phone buzzed with a message from David. It was brief. Can we talk? Without hesitation, Thomas called him. Hey, brother. What's going on? Hey, Oscar, David replied. I wanted to ask if I can stay with you for a few days. Of course, Thomas said, feeling a wave of unease. What's happening? Patricia confessed that she had a brief affair, David admitted quietly. She says it's over and swears it won't happen again. It's hard, really hard to trust her again. I want to, but deep down, I'm not sure I'll ever fully forgive her. David, you know how much you and Patricia mean to me, Thomas said. No matter what you decide, I'll stand by you. I appreciate that, Thomas, David replied, his voice filled with uncertainty. But tell me, what would you do if this happened with Lily? Thomas sighed, pausing before he answered. David, I hope I never find myself in that situation. I love Lily more than anything in the world, just like you love Patricia. But if Lily ever betrayed me, I don't know how I would react. David nodded, lost in thought. Yes, I still have feelings for Patricia, and I think she feels the same. But I'm stuck, brother. I don't know what to do. As your older brother, Thomas said gently, I can't tell you what's right. It's something you have to decide for yourself, for your future. David exhaled heavily. Thanks, brother. I promised Patricia we'd talk it through tonight. Let me know if you need me to stop by, Thomas said. But the night passed without a call. It seemed that David and Patricia had decided to give it another try. I couldn't blame him for the choice. It was his life, and only he could decide what was right. Looking back, I'm almost certain I would have acted differently, but it's easy to say that when you're not living through it. Later that night, as I lay in bed with Lily, my thoughts began to wander. Lily, I asked, are you truly happy with the life we've built together? She looked at me, her eyes glowing with warmth. Thomas, I love you more than words can express. Our life, everything we've built, makes me incredibly happy. Why are you asking? Is something bothering you? No, I quickly replied. I just needed to hear it. I can't imagine a greater happiness than what I feel with you. She smiled softly, a playful tone in her voice. Good answer. You're getting wiser every day. Then she leaned closer and whispered, Now enough talking. Kiss me. The next day, David told me he wanted a divorce from Patricia. It turned out she had been cheating on him for about 3 months, and he had no intention of forgiving her. She made her choice, and now she'd regret it. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. In the dimly lit living room, the 5 of us sat, immersed in a tension that had replaced the warmth that once filled this apartment. There had been many moments when Linda, my wife of 3 years, and I filled this space with laughter, hosting joyful family gatherings. But today was far from those happy memories. Linda sat across from me on the couch, her parents on either side of her. My mother was seated next to me in our worn-out armchair, holding my hand, offering silent, unspoken support. Though my mother was on my side, I could sense her inner conflict. I had asked her to remain silent during this conversation, assuring her I would handle everything. She reluctantly agreed, understanding the gravity of the situation. Since everyone had gathered, she had only spoken a few polite greetings. But before they arrived, she said something that stuck in my mind. Her voice was soft when she whispered, "I wish your father were here." I merely nodded, unable to admit that, truthfully, I was glad he wasn't. No son wants his father to witness the collapse of his marriage. I also knew that if my father were here, the tension would have only escalated. He and my mother-in-law, Barbara, had never gotten along. Their presence in the same room would have been a disaster. I could almost hear my father's voice in my head. "Do what you need to, son. We'll be behind you." And then, he'd probably look at me with that knowing expression, meaning, "I told you so," with a slight smirk. Despite my previous thoughts, I had to admit, I missed him. His absence created a void, but it was necessary. I wanted this meeting to go as smoothly as possible so I could endure it emotionally. If he were here, the fragile calm would have shattered, and I couldn't afford that. I needed to remain focused, detached. The past few days had been a whirlwind of emotions, and I wasn't sure if I was mentally prepared for what was coming. The silence between us dragged on painfully until my father-in-law finally broke it. "Oliver, we appreciate that you agreed to this meeting," he began, his voice tense. I looked at him, noticing that he looked as exhausted as I felt. It was clear that none of us had been sleeping well. Suddenly, I was struck by a wave of compassion. I had always respected him, despite his tendency to be easily influenced by his wife and daughter. On the other side of the room, Barbara sat rigid, barely concealing her disdain for me. Her anger simmered just below the surface, and it was clear she blamed me for corrupting her daughter. To her, the fact that Linda and I had been intimate before marriage was just another nail in my coffin. Of course, she ignored the truth. Linda was not the innocent victim she portrayed her to be. But Barbara's hatred had never been based on logic. I knew this meeting would be particularly hard for her, and strangely, that gave me a small sense of satisfaction. She would have to swallow her pride, though I knew that saving this marriage was impossible. Any hope she had was false, and she would soon realize it. Linda sat between her parents, dressed simply, in jeans and a blouse. Even now, after everything that had happened, I couldn't help but notice how beautiful she was. She wasn't a classic beauty, but her natural girl-next-door charm had drawn me in from the start. Despite the tear stains on her face and her red, swollen eyes, I still saw the woman I fell in love with 5 years ago. Looking at her, I felt a painful tightness in my chest, my heart beating heavily. On the outside, I appeared calm, almost indifferent, but inside the pain was fresh, raw. I had not forgiven her. Any compassion I might have felt was buried under the realization that her actions had brought us here. It all began with her behavior at her sister's wedding last week, when she made a scene that would now undoubtedly become the topic of all future family gatherings, but for all the wrong reasons. After that, Linda had moved in with her parents, and we hadn't spoken in person since. Our few phone conversations had been brief and unproductive. I stopped answering her calls when her excuses stopped sounding convincing. I began to realize that maybe I had never truly known my wife. "This has been hard on everyone," my father-in-law said softly. "But maybe we can still work through this, start healing, save the marriage." "Thank you, Mr. Thomas," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I understand your intentions, but you can't fix something that's so broken. Luckily, we don't have any children, which would complicate things further. Now we just need to figure out how to move forward with the divorce." At that moment, Linda's voice broke, and she, once again in tears, whispered my name. "Oliver." I didn't want us to break up. My gaze was fixed on her, my jaw clenched as I tried with all my might to maintain control and utter the words, "Calm down." What I hadn't expected was to see my wife chatting sweetly with her ex-boyfriend at her sister's wedding, and that's when I lost it. My frustration spilled over, and I'm sure it was obvious to everyone. I couldn't hide my anger. "Don't speak like that, Oliver," she responded, her voice dripping with icy mockery that sent chills down my spine. This isn't your concern, Barbara. You can leave whenever you want. I watched her take a sharp breath, trying to suppress her irritation, but to my surprise, she didn't respond. For the first time, she remained silent. Oliver, please forgive me. Linda's voice trembled with genuine regret. A mistake, right? I said, trying to stifle a smirk, but judging by the reactions around us, I didn't succeed. Why don't you explain exactly what the mistake was, Linda? Was it getting so drunk at the banquet that you ended up practically rubbing against your ex in front of everyone? Or maybe when I pulled the two of you apart and you loudly declared that you didn't belong to me and could dance with whomever you wanted? Or maybe the mistake was mine, for watching you all this time. Because an hour later, when I turned away, you disappeared. And guess what? I found you again, having fun with him, just like before. I know for certain that hitting him wasn't a mistake, I continued. I punched him several times and only stopped when you started screaming that I'd kill him. Perhaps my mistake was not finishing the job, because he ran off like a coward as soon as I turned my back. So Linda, tell me, where exactly did this mistake happen? Was it when you looked down while dancing so close and gasped at what accidentally happened? Oliver, I was drunk. I'm sorry. I don't even know how it all happened, she said, her voice trembling. It's not that hard to figure out, Linda. I'm sure Barbara explained it all to you when you were younger, the part where a man puts his part into yours, and when you get married, that man should be your husband. So spare me your excuses. Her father intervened, trying to calm things down. Oliver, I understand how bad this looks right now. I was about to say something, but he raised his hand to stop me. Listen, I know it looks awful, but it was just a one-time thing. I believe you're strong enough to forgive her. Well, Mr. Thomas, I don't know if I can forgive a one-time thing, but is that the issue here, Linda? I turned to her father, watching as Linda's face turned pale. Because it seems like your daughter was so determined to be a good older sister at Samantha's bachelorette party that she gave her a hands-on lesson on how to do things right. And guess what? Samantha learned quickly. Last week, I received a rather explicit video. Technology, huh? Phones now can record with stunning clarity. Not quite as perfect as professional filming, but clear enough to see the Thomas sisters in action. Linda covered her face with her hands, muttering, "Oh God." I wonder if Liam knows about the strippers, I continued. Seems like someone should inform him, don't you think? He'll probably consider it a one-time mistake too, don't you agree? By this point, Harry and Barbara had turned as pale as their daughter, while Linda's sobs filled the tense, suffocating silence of the room. What happened next stunned me. I thought that exposing the stripper incident would be the final blow, the one that would break the silence forever. But I was wrong. At first, I couldn't believe she had stayed silent for so long. Then I began to wonder if she was preparing to save the situation, perhaps to convince me to stay in the marriage, at least long enough for me to make a mistake that she could use for a public divorce. That was my delusion. The dragon, in her furious rage, clearly believed that the best defense was a strong offense, and without hesitation, she launched her attack. "You hypocritical creature!" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You sit here pretending to be a paragon of virtue, all pure and untouchable." "Barbara, please stop," Harry begged, his voice full of desperation. "No," she cut him off sharply, paying no attention to his pleas. "I'm not going to sit idly by and let this worthless man threaten our family, especially when I have proof that he's just as guilty as Linda." The silence that followed her words was palpable, thick with tension and shock. Ignoring it, Barbara started rummaging through her oversized bag, what she casually referred to as her purse. After a few moments, with a flourish like a magician revealing a trick, she pulled out a small manila envelope. Half of me expected her to say, "Ta-da! Here, swallow this," she hissed, tossing the envelope in my direction. Inside, I found evidence. Photos of my car parked outside a shabby motel last month when I was supposedly on a business trip. There were also copies of the motel registration. My mother, who was sitting next to me, gasped softly and squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with disbelief and fear. "The alias Callum Smith wasn't the most creative," Barbara said with disdain in her voice. but the motel clerk made sure to note down your license plate. In another part of the room, Linda buried her face in her hands, her sobs breaking the tense silence. Barbara wrapped her arms around her daughter, whispering, "Don't worry, dear. Mommy's got this under control. I told the ladies at church a couple of weeks ago." She scanned the room, adding with a note of triumph, "I'm sure half the town knows by now, and when they hear about today, they'll all understand. You were wronged first. All's fair in love and war." Outwardly, I remained calm, though inside my heart was pounding and my mind screamed that I needed to fight back. Perhaps I was still processing the shock of it all. Slowly, I reviewed the contents of the envelope and handed it to my mother, noticing the tears welling up in her eyes. I gently patted her hand and smiled, trying to offer some comfort. "All right, Barbara," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Before you decide to go full detective mode, maybe you should check your facts. That business trip? It was a company training. I have about 30 colleagues who can vouch that I didn't miss a single boring session during those 4 days. And while I was out of town, Linda's car was in the shop. Guess whose car she was using at the time?" I paused before continuing. "Oh, and one more thing you might want to consider. Do you remember Linda's colleagues at the clinic? Dr. Sammy, ring any bells? His full name is Dr. Callum Smith." Barbara's face froze in shock. "But," my father-in-law muttered, "he's older than me." "Exactly," I said with icy calm. "It seems your daughter has a thing for older men, maybe some unresolved daddy issues, among other things. Good luck with family therapy." "Ollie," Linda whispered, her voice trembling. "I know. It was only once." I stood, feeling the weight of the conversation begin to crush me. Looking at the 3 people in my living room, I realized I couldn't continue this charade any longer. "I think everything that needed to be said has been said," I stated. "It's time for you all to leave." Harry got up and helped Linda to her feet, but Barbara remained standing as if paralyzed. For a moment, I thought she was about to have a medical episode, a heart attack or a stroke, but then she pulled herself together and stood. Her gaze met mine, cold and unblinking. "I expected more from you, Oliver," she said, her words like icy shards. "But from you, Barbara, I never expected anything. You're just a hypocritical, moralizing fraud. Now get out of my apartment." Barbara stormed out, her fury evident in every step. To my surprise, Harry gave me a firm hug before following her. Linda was the last to leave. Her beautiful green eyes, red and swollen from crying, were filled with such deep sorrow that my own tears finally broke free. "Oliver, I don't even know how to begin to ask for your forgiveness," she whispered, her voice laden with regret. The guilt I carried within me was immense, but it was nothing compared to the all-consuming regret that overtook me. Regret for having entrusted my heart to someone like you, Linda. She burst into tears and hurriedly ran out of the room. When I closed the door behind her, the dam of my emotions broke, and I felt the full weight of what had happened. I leaned my back against the door, trying to maintain my composure, but the tears flowed despite all my efforts. The bitter truth was undeniable. I still loved her despite everything. This betrayal was unimaginable. I couldn't understand why she had cheated, but even knowing the reasons wouldn't change the inevitable. Our marriage was over. The pain, anger, and grief had settled deep within me, and I knew they would linger for a long time. My mother appeared and gently embraced me. "How are you holding up?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Not well, but I'll manage. I believe that one day happiness will come back to me. I think Dad would be proud of how I'm handling this." "Do you know what you'll do next?" she asked. I nodded slightly. "There's not much left to save. I've decided to take Barbara's advice and start moving forward." There was nothing more to say. I had made up my mind to meet with Linda at her church on Sunday, so she could fully grasp the seriousness of her actions. And I was going to explore the possibility of filing a lawsuit against the doctor she had an affair with, if only to complicate his professional life. "That will certainly stir things up. What about Liam and Samantha?" Mom asked. "If I receive this video, then Liam might have as well. Even if not, he has the right to know. Maybe their marriage will survive this." I sincerely hoped they could work things out. If they managed to fix everything, it might prevent further infidelity, and their marriage could last longer than my short 3 years. I decided to write Samantha a letter and give her a week to tell Liam herself before I intervened. Mom smiled at me with understanding. "You're just like your father," she said, shaking her head. "It's a shame he couldn't be here today." She gave me a gentle smile and pulled a small voice recorder from her bag. "He asked me to record everything for him. It was hard for him not to be here. He had been disappointed when I asked him not to come. He understood my reasons, but I knew it hurt him. Now that so many of my future plans had crumbled, I felt lost." I took a deep breath and shook my head. "It feels like I've wasted 5 years of my life." "No, you haven't," she replied firmly. "You've learned hard lessons, but they'll serve you well in the future. Your next marriage will be stronger because of them." My next marriage? I couldn't imagine ever trusting someone enough to marry again. She smiled warmly at me. "Darling, you're only 29. It may take time, but you'll meet someone special. Someone who will be worthy of your trust and truly happy to be with you." Mom had always been an optimist. I couldn't help but smile when she leaned in to kiss me on the cheek. "And don't forget, I'm still counting on grandchildren one day." We both laughed, and in that moment of laughter, the tension in my chest began to ease. I realized that in time, I would find happiness again. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.